Look, hey, thank you all for being here this morning. You are in for a treat. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce George Mumford, performance and mindful expert, and he's our first speaker in a concept that some of you may have heard about called Presidential Conversations. And I'm glad that George has agreed to be our initial launch of that program. George Mumford is a globally recognized speaker, teacher, and coach. Since 1989, he's been honoring or honing his groundbreaking performance and mindfulness techniques with people from locker rooms to boardrooms. He says it's from Yale to jail. Michael Jordan credits Mumford with transforming his on-court leadership. George has also worked with Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, and countless other NBA players, Olympians, executives, and artists. George's first book, The Mindful Athlete: Secrets to Pure Performance, is a memoir and instruction guide to accessing your inner masterpiece. His new book, Unlocked, Embrace Your Greatness, Find the Flow, Discover Success, was published in May of 2023. While at the University of Massachusetts, where he roomed with future Hall of Famer Julius Erving. How many of you know that name? Okay, great. A lot of folks do. George was injured, and those injuries forced him out of basketball. And ultimately, and he's going to, I'm sure, talk about this, led to some very dark places in his life: addiction to pain medication and drugs. With the help of his deep faith, meditation, and mindfulness, he got clean and made it his life's mission to teach and work with others. We are thrilled to have him here today. So everybody, please put your hands together and let's welcome George Mumford.
Thank you. So what's up? I bet you didn't expect that, right? Anyway, I'm excited to be here, and you know what I see when I look out there? If folks have any idea? I see a bunch of masterpieces. I see divine sparks. I see potential. And so how many of you folks know about me or know my story? Raise your hand. Okay, great. So there's a lot of you that don't, and we prepared for that. We actually have a video that can help you get to know some of the work that I've been involved in over the last 30, 40 years. So anyway, so without further ado,
my next guest struggled with heroin addiction in his 20s, but went on to become a nationally recognized teacher of mindfulness meditation. George Mumford has worked with prison inmates and NBA luminaries like Michael Jordan and Shaquille O'Neal.
George Mumford is literally a professional game changer.
Success is being and expressing yourself, and hopefully in the service of helping others.
Some people talk about mindfulness in a way where it's a new wonder drug. And I don't see it that way. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I'll continue to do it when it's no longer a fad. I find it as a way of life.
Is that a moment of mindfulness, being in the zone when you're an athlete?
Yes, you're just allowing things to happen and you're just flowing. If you're a novice, you say, okay, I'm in a high state of arousal, I'm in over my head, I can't do it. Where the athletes know, like a Michael Jordan, knows that I'm in a high state of arousal, I'm in the right frame of mind to get into the flow.
Manage the moment. You manage this moment, the next moment's gonna be fine. Then you get into a rhythm, you get into a flow. Whatever you focus on grows. So you focus on, it's gonna be great, okay. You gotta feel that, you gotta be a champion before you win a championship.
I'm going back to 1846, Soren Kierkegaard. He said one side of the coin is freedom or potential, the heads, the other side is anxiety or uncertainty. He called it the alarming possibility of being able.
I've never met George Mumford until today. Very happy to meet you, but I've been following his work for a long time, and he is an impressive dude. He has taught mindfulness and meditation to some of the greatest athletes of all time.
So life is constant changes. It's changing and understanding on some level. We have no idea what's going to happen the next moment. But can we embrace it in that space between stimulus and response?
Mumford explains there are times in life, and certainly in competition, where chaos is swirling all around you. It's total madness, it's absolute mayhem, and what you have to do is create space in the middle of all that where your mind can work from a place of undisturbed calm.
There's this quiet, blue sky, stillness, and that we have that inside of us. We have this ability to be still and to be in connection with that and allow all the turmoil, all the whirlwinds that surround us to not identify with the whirlwind, but to identify with the quiet place inside of us. If we're not uncomfortable, then you're probably not learning. And I don't mean being uncomfortable all the time, but I talk about getting comfortable being uncomfortable, which means keep moving and increasing your capacity to grow, learn, and experience life in different ways. And that's what it comes down to. So it's an inside job.
True understanding comes from reflecting on experience. No one can do it for us but us. That's what I discovered. It's really more about me just understanding that each moment is where paradise is.
George Mumford brought some of the same lessons he taught Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and Phil Jackson to students at Flint's Doyle Ryder Elementary. Mumford learned the power of mindfulness after experiencing chronic pain and wanting to figure out how to deal with it without medication or alcohol. It taught him how the mind-body process works.
Mindfulness isn't just to get relaxed and to be calm. It's really about cultivating wisdom so that we eradicate or alleviate suffering.
When I wake up, I don't have to struggle to get out of bed because my purpose is going to help me to jump out of bed because I'm really enthusiastic. I got something to do.
I've had the opportunity of being around greatness all my life. I've roomed with Dr. J in college. I've worked with elite of elite athletes. I understand you guys have 5 pillars, right? So the one that kind of jumped out at me, I wanted to talk about is gratitude. You have this paradigm that says you're going to get drafted or you're going to be the best player or you're going to do whatever you're going to do, then you're going to be happy. That's a losing proposition.
So it's about learning. It's about really being in the moment, letting things speak to us in their own language instead of us interpreting them. And to the degree that we can do that, we can learn more and we can live in that mystery, that joy of discovery.
It's better together, and we have to figure out who we want to be and where we're going. Right? They say if you don't know where you're going, you could end up going anywhere. And if you don't know who you are, you can end up being anybody.
You embrace whatever comes up. That's what I talk about. Embrace and generate the hope. You have to keep finding the courage to say yes and to say, what's the lesson here?
I have to say, that's a tough act to follow. And when I think about it, it still amazes me that not only did that happen, but it's happening. So this vision of possibility. So I love the idea of presidential conversations, because believe it or not, conversations are what make the world go round. And if you have the right conversation, it will lead to the right action. And so I want to talk about this idea of principle-centered leadership. Okay, great, you can go to the next. So to be a leader, you have to be yourself and access your masterpiece. And so for me, it's interesting because what does that mean? What is this thing we call the masterpiece within? So you want to go to the next slide. So it's this idea of being able to understand that you have a masterpiece, but we have this ability to be self-aware. And this kind of awareness I'm talking about is like mirror mind. it takes a lot of courage to see things, because some things are challenging to see. But if you can see things and then understand that being masterpieces, we have this ability to self-regulate. So what does that mean? And you heard one of the video segments when I talked about creating space between stimulus and response, and in that space you have the freedom and power to choose. And that's what it comes to, is understanding how there's always a little space, but how to create more space. And in that space, we get to choose our thoughts, our feelings, our behavior, how we interpret things, who we are. And so this going back to, and so by being able to do that, you get the self-mastery. And so when you think about my trajectory, and when I was an athlete in college and I got injured and I didn't know who I was, and I went down, into the way of seeking power through, medication and alcohol and drugs and whatnot. It was only when I got out of that. But how did I get out of that? See, because the interesting thing we're going to talk about at some point is this idea of, to be a leader, you got to be yourself. So you have to be self-led. So in my experience, I was self-led once I accepted the fact that I had an issue, and then I connected to what I would say a higher power. Or I had without connecting to the power source, I would not be here. None of this stuff would be possible. And that, having that firm foundation, that grounding in reality and divinity and the way things work. It could be as simple as present moment awareness, but it's this idea of connecting to something greater than yourself. And so when I talk about principle-centered leadership, starting from the individual self so that I get the self-mastery, is understanding how I need to connect to higher power, how I need to direct myself inside and access that masterpiece within. And so do you know where that idea of masterpiece came from? If you read my book, what I talk about is Michelangelo. He was this great sculptor, and they said, well, how do you create these great works of art? And you know what he said? He said, all I do is chip away to get to the masterpiece that's already there. And so what I had to come to the realization is that I had a masterpiece, and it was an inside job, and only I could access it. So just like I have a masterpiece, we all have a masterpiece. And if you're lucky enough to have desperation like me, there's no way to go. But they say, okay, are you going to let go and allow yourself to figure out how to live according to principles? Because the thing about principles, especially when your values are principles, that means they're universal, timeless, and self-evident. So this self-evident is really important, because part of this process of self-regulating is understanding what we're doing and taking personal responsibility for who we are. And so this idea of being yourself, and I'm thinking about, so one of the things you may not know about me is that I'm coming up on 41 years of sobriety in July, and I've read over a book a week during that time, a minimum of a book a week. And so this idea of really understanding myself, going inside and understanding, who am I, why am I here? So Greg, maybe you can go to the next slide, the one that has Joseph Campbell. So it's interesting, because in my process of going through this recovery, I was a functional substance abuser, so I was still working. Even though I was doing that stuff, I went into detox and came out. And then when I woke up, when I realized, oh, I'm a financial analyst. Well, how did I end up being a financial analyst? Well, my basketball coach in high school said that accountants make good money. So I don't think that was self-led. That was just like, okay, I'm gonna do what people tell me to do. But then when I got clean, I realized that it was okay, but my heart wasn't in it. And so I gave myself permission to go inside and say, well, why am I here? How can I give back to the world? And so if you see this quote, and at the same time when I was making that adjustment, I was watching The Power of Myth. And so he was having a conversation about the hero's journey. He was having a conversation about being your unique self. So it says, this, I believe, is a great Western truth, that each of us is a completely unique creature, and that if we are ever to give any gift to the world, it will have to come out of our own experience and fulfillment of our own potentialities, not someone else's. So it's really challenging when everybody else is doing things, And how do you stay centered? How did I stay centered? How I stayed centered is going inside and focusing on why I was here, what I had to offer to the world. And without the substance abuse, without the challenges, I wouldn't have done it. That makes sense? And so a lot of us, we see that these difficulties, because life is difficult. But once I accepted it's difficult, it's no longer difficult. And so I use this as an opportunity to not have a roadblock, to have a stepping stone. Does that make sense? And so this idea of, and that's what I talk about in the book, you know, the self-awareness, self-regulation, self-mastery. But once I started getting clean and started developing and being myself, my authentic self, and that's a process, because one of the things that I realized is that self-knowledge and self-invention are lifelong processes. And so this idea of leadership begins with yourself, but not end with yourself. And so the other part of that is now that I have self-mastery, or I have an understanding of who I am and how I can give something to the world, how I can make things better, then it's like, okay, so so what else do I need to do? So the other thing I need to do is understand that I'm in a network of relationships, and how do I relate to others? And how do I give people or model the behavior so people can do what I do? Be self-led, and then bring that self-ledness into a community or organization, because every organization begins with the individual self. So the idea is to have social awareness and understand, okay, we have this, what I experience is we have this illusion of separateness. That you know, I'm me and you're you, and I just got to focus on me and take care of me, and the hell with you. But what I realized is that when I started going inside and I realized I and the other were one. See, I grew up Southern Baptist, so I have a certain way of relating to things, because that's what I learned. But it's the idea of understanding that since I and the other are one, how do I get beyond this illusion of separateness? And what does that look like? So we're coming up on our anniversary. I don't know if it was 2013 or whatever, when we had the marathon bombing in Boston. I live in Boston. And I have to tell you, I never rooted for a baseball team as much as I rooted for the Red Sox that year. Why? Well, I used to be a Red Sox fan when I was younger, but you get older, then you actually know people to play for other teams, so you still like the home team, but I don't get involved in who wins or doesn't win. But what I was seeing, I was having a vision of having the championship parade coming down the same venue where the marathon bombing happened. And so it was like, yes, it was something that I felt like we needed to show that we're still, you didn't do anything to us. We're stronger than we were before. And the interesting thing is people get beyond the illusion of separateness every once in a while. And in that situation, people got beyond the illusion of separateness. And how did that manifest? Instead of running away from the explosion, they ran toward it. Now think about that. There was no, it didn't matter what your sexual orientation was, what your political party was, what you looked like, whether you were part of my tribe or not. There was this feeling that we have to go there. And so the question is, how do we get beyond that illusion of separateness? And that's part of the process of social awareness and relationship development. So we realize I and the other one. You all get what I'm saying? And this is so really important, because you can see it's not happening right now. Or it happens sometimes, and when it happens, it's almost like we're doing it like for a lot of years I was doing this stuff in the back on the down low, because people didn't like words like spirituality or me talking about, loving everybody, because, if you think about it, growing up Christian and studying Buddhism and all of the religions and whatnot, what I think about is, the two things that I learned about the Christ consciousness is love everything and continual forgiveness. And that means me. So a lot of that work was forgiving myself. Does this make sense? So I'm not proselytizing or anything. I'm just saying, you got to line, principle-centered. Love helps, all of this stuff. And so the idea is to train ourselves to get to the point where our divine potential is most effective when it starts to become automatic, when it becomes unconscious and subconscious. When this happens, people do exactly what they know to do, not what they think they know, not what they should know, not what other people say they know. As the Chinese say, to know and not to do is in fact not to know. So let's go back to that bombing. We could take 9/11. We can take the fires in California. We could talk about the flooding down south. It's the same thing. It's something, when we get to the habit of just being able to know I and the other one and already reaching out, extending ourselves beyond ourselves to help somebody else. Does that make sense? And so, and the interesting thing about that is, you can go to the next slide, Greg. I'm not sure what's there. Okay, so we'll get to that. But the interesting thing is, and I was thinking about this coming over here. People think this idea of leadership is you have one leader and they're dictating everything. And that might be the old style of leadership, the command and control, or I'm the boss and, you know, it's like I'm great and you're not and you got to listen to me. But the great leaders are people who share power, who realize we need everything. So what do? We create, this is what I do, I create the possibility for people to share in that, to put some skin in the game. So it's not my team or my company, it's our company. And how do you do that? The whole person paradigm. You don't say shut up and dribble, because they're more than a body. They got a heart, they have a soul, or what I would call spirit, and they have a mind. And so I and the other one, so we have the whole person, see them as a whole person with a body, mind, heart, and soul. And the interesting thing is, and Stephen Covey did a lot of this in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the thing is, if I'm relating to myself, because I start with myself and then relating with others, if I'm relating to myself as a body, or as a mind and a heart, but not as a spirit, or if I leave out one of those aspects of being, then I'm relating to myself as a thing, not a person. Does that make sense? So begin with myself, so I do that, and then now when I see other people, it's like, oh, okay, just like me, they want to be happy, you know, they're a child of God, whatever, but they have the ability for liberty, life, and the pursuit of happiness. And so understanding that and keeping that up front, having those principles, seeking to understand, then to be understood, this principle of love everybody and total continual forgiveness. And I know it's challenging to do. Sometimes the best I can do is just try to earn that person's respect or something by treating them the way I want to be treated. Because to say I have to love my neighbor as I love myself, now that's a problem, because a lot of us don't love ourselves. Because we were taught that that's selfish. And so we have to really evaluate these paradigms and really understand, how do we do this thing called life, and how do we get to the point where we're inviting other people to share the power with us. So it's not just us. It's not just me, it's all of us. But in order to do that, you have to have, everybody has to be doing the same thing. Everybody has to get to the level of self-mastery or be in that process. Does that make sense? And I'll share with you, you know, my leadership experience growing up when I was in high school. I was coaching the basketball team, and my brother, my younger brother, and my neighbor were on the team. And I went out of my way to make it hard on them, because I didn't want anybody to think that I was, you know, playing favorites. And they did that anyway. They thought I was playing favorites. And then my brother and my neighbor, they were upset with me because I was treating them badly. But I was letting other people lead me instead of me leading. Understand what I'm saying? And so then when I started working at the medical center, and my experience there as a leader was, I was in charge of a prison project, and I was training people to go into hostile environments and teach mindfulness-based stress reduction, teaching people, and the folks in prison, they were in recovery units, and we were teaching them how to get beyond the substances, but also understanding that the recidivism rate was high. What does that mean? They were programmed, and when they went to prison, they were programmed to be better thieves or to not change the lifestyle. And so I was teaching them how to do that, but here's the interesting thing. I didn't go in and say, you got to do it the way George does it. I went in and said, okay, you have to figure this out. I'm gonna give you the power. I'm gonna give you, I want you to join me in this. So this is our program. And so one of the things we did is we developed a workbook for the inmates. And I didn't have anything to do with that. I just said, okay, you folks do it, you come up and you do it. So I gave them the power and the freedom to find themselves and to find their voice just like I did. Does that make sense? And so why am I saying all this? And I want to keep it short, but I'm saying this because a lot of us might be thinking, in my experience working with student athletes, is when I had challenged finding people to be leaders on the team. Why? Because they thought being a leader means you got to get on people and you got to be perfect. And I said, no, that's not what the leadership I'm talking about. I'm talking about you having to understand that when you're a leader, you model the behavior. You model, trust, and inspire. That means you make mistakes. And because if you think you're a leader and you're never going to make mistakes, that's unrealistic. But if you make a mistake and you own it, and then you learn and practice so you can get better at it, that's what I'm talking about. And so having to expand that definition of leadership so that I could get folks to be captains, right? Be captains of the team and whatnot. And even with that was challenging, so we did it by committee. We did it with, okay, so all the seniors would do it. Because I remember this coach, I think he was a rugby coach in Massachusetts, and he had, like I said, there's 20 players on the team. And so he was asking the freshmen, how many leaders do you think are on this team? And they said, 2, or maybe expanded it to the seniors 4. And the coach says, no, we got 20 leaders on this team. So everybody can put skin in the game. Everybody can contribute. Does that make sense? And it's like, so expanding that. And so the thing is, you could be a leader now. You might think you have to be in a leadership role. No, all you got to do is just be yourself and realize that you and the other are connected. And something needs to be done, you just do it. And you do it with love. You do it with compassion. And it becomes a way of being, like we talked about. You understand? So to me, it's like, yeah, I'm just kicking this off. We can't do everything. But what we can realize is you can do things today to develop your leadership skill and to make a difference. So when you see people, say hi to them, relate to them, smile at them, acts of kindness. And so me coming here, it was a very interesting experience. I was on a plane, and there's there was JetBlue, and there's 2 seats on this side, 3 seats on this side. And I was sitting on a 2-seater, and the guy that was sitting next to me, he came and sat down, and he was mostly in my seat. I mean, I couldn't even put the arm, couldn't go down. And he looked at me and said, no, that ain't happening. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm saying, well, this dude, I don't know who he is. He's in my personal space. And you know what goes through your mind and whatever, but because I've been programmed, I was just watching my thoughts without getting upset or anything. And then the light bulb went off and said, oh, just move your seat. Now, there's probably a conversation with someone saying, well, no, he should move. Why should I move? And so for me, I just said, hey, can I move my seat? And I moved my seat, and I went over to the row right across from me, and there were three chairs, and the person was in the aisle and nobody on the window, so I sat in the window, and it was fine. As a matter of fact, I wanted some tea, and the guy that was sitting next to me gave me a decaf tea bag so that I could use it. And so when I go to places, when I go to things, I say, hi, how you doing? When I go to the Whole Foods, or last year I worked with Edmonton, and then I worked with the Lakers back in 2000 or 2003 or something like that. When I go back to that same Hilton Garden Inn, oh, Mr. Mumford, what can we do for you? Why? Because I was giving them love. I was seeing them, and if we got extra hats or something, I'd give it to them. How you doing? How's your daughter? How's your family? I was relating to them as a whole person, not as somebody just giving me my room key. And I can do that all day long. And that's having an impact. That's modeling the behavior and trusting and inspiring. And so that's what I think we can do. So sometimes we say, okay, we came to this talk and we can do this. Well, we can start doing this now. And if you're a leader, you can start modeling, trusting, and inspiring. But I think you might already be doing that. I'm just going to encourage you to do that more. But that's the whole key here. You know, I could talk about all that stuff that happened there. And even when I was working, how did it happen? How did my career start? Well, my meditation teacher said to me one day, I went in for an interview, and he said, I think you should teach. And I said, I don't want to teach. I don't see myself as a teacher. He says, that's why I want you to teach. Because you're humble. You're not doing it for some other reason other than to make a difference. And so that's what we have to do, understand how people can motivate us. He pushed me out of my comfort zone a little bit. When I was in high school, English was not my best subject, but I had this teacher that believed in me, and I had a great semester. Why? Because he believed in me. He modeled, trusted, and inspired me, and I was able to do what I did. And so I can give you a lot of stories about this stuff because I'm always doing things. Last year, maybe I'll end with last year, I went to Edmonton. So I got contacted through LinkedIn, and the CEO called me and said, hey man, I think you can help us win a championship. You helped Michael and Scotty win a championship. We got two Michael and Scotty's here. We got Leon Draisaitl and David and Connor McDavid. You can come here and help us win. So I thought about it and said, I can help transform that organization. Yeah, I'm in. So I went there last year and I worked. Now, when I got there, everything I talked about, model, trust, and inspire, but I couldn't go there and do what I did with the Bulls or the Lakers or with any other team. I had to go there like I didn't know anything and just have conversations. I would call championship conversations with them about what they want, who are they, what they want to achieve. So they say, okay, I want to do this. And I say, okay, to do that, you have to be this. And so I went there and I spent a lot of time making connections with everybody. So when I go there, I'm not there now because of some other things, but when I go there, I don't care who it is, the people in the hotel, Mr. Mumford, they love me. The people, the fans, they say, hey man, can you take a picture with me, sign my autograph? I never had that happen before. But because they can feel the love and they can see that I'm there to make a difference and I'm loving everybody and I'm forgiving myself, forgiving them. And that modeling and trusting and inspiring. And it was amazing. We didn't win the Stanley Cup, but we did something that no one done in 81 years. We were down 3-0 in the Stanley Cup Finals, and we forced a Game 7. And so that whole town was transformed. People weren't fighting, and we motivated millions of people. We didn't win this cup, but we had such a huge impact. And all that's because I just said, oh, I can help. And let's do this thing. And to the degree that they were able to put skin in the game and say, this is our team, not Connor's team, not Leon's team, but our team, our organization. And so when I go back there, nothing but love. They all love me. And why do they love me? Because I'm just being me, and I'm beyond the illusion of separateness. So I don't know if I want to say any more than that. We can open up for Q&A, but I just want you to have the possibility of making a difference now. You don't have to wait till you become a leader or wait till you go and lead your team or your organization, because we have work, love, and play. We have interaction with people all the time, and we have an opportunity to honestly be ourselves and express ourselves in a way where we can create a space for people to be who they are. That make sense? So let's just open it up for questions. And we have a mic somewhere. So this is what's helpful, because this is my preferred method, is having Socratic style. So you can talk about the breakthroughs you had or whatever questions you have or whatever. But this is an opportunity for you to find your voice.
George, I'll break the ice a little bit. In the introduction, I mentioned some pretty high-profile names: Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant. I remember seeing Michael Jordan's the documentary that told about his rise from high school.
Last Dance, yeah.
Yeah. How did you relate to a guy that was that big as in the world of athletics? How did you get through his mindset and his perceptions of himself? Because he was, at that time, nobody compared to Michael Jordan. How did you break through that?
Yeah, I helped him understand why he could do some things. But the interesting thing is I had a lot of street cred because I roomed with Dr. J in college, and Dr. J was MJ before MJ. But it was just, and it's interesting you asked me that because when I started working with the Bulls, the first 18 months, he wasn't there. And I have this good friend of mine saying, yeah, he retired when he saw you coming. You know, he saying that to me because when I got there, his father had passed away and he left the team. And when he came back, so I had been working with the team for 18 months before he came back. And when he came back, you know, we came to Boston and I would get with the team and we would do a little session and before the game, we meditate and talk about strategies or talk about being mindful, being in the moment and that sort of thing. So he was there and so he was just looking around and peeking and seeing what was going on. And then he just got right into it because I just related to him like I relate to everybody else. He's a superstar and all that, but he's a person and I'm relating to his masterpiece. Does that make sense? And so, and not only that, but I would say him and Kobe are probably two of my best students because they were like, oh, I get this, and he's going to help me go to the next level. And it doesn't matter where you are, because you're only competing against your previous best self. So the idea is to get a little bit better, get a little bit better, get a little bit better. And because it's unlimited potential, I know how to help them unlock. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay, in your book, you talk about Kobe Bryant's uncanny ability to get in the flow and stay in the flow, especially during like the NBA playoffs. And not all of us can do that. So what is your best advice for forgetting about maybe yesterday's issues and getting in the flow and staying there?
Yeah, well, have you tried doing it? Yes. Give me an example.
Well, as the provost, there's a few things that go on campus that can be distracting, and then you still have other things to get done. So what I try and do is make a decision, be comfortable with it after a lot of discussion, be comfortable with that decision, and then try and look at it step by step instead of the whole big picture. And that tends to help me see a path from beginning to end.
So when you say you want to be like Kobe, so not everybody's going to be on the basketball court. Not everybody's going to do that. But the challenge is for us to embrace where we are because we're in this place, and how are we going to relate to it? And so you don't have to be Kobe-like. You have to be you-like. But the principles are the same. You'll be in a moment, be on purpose, be on time, but have confidence in yourself. The self-regulation, the self-awareness, self-regulation. When you see yourself getting distracted, and this is the interesting thing, people don't like to meditate or go into the silent meditation because they see that their mind is all over the place and they think they're not doing it right. When in actuality, that's exactly what's happening. And if we can embrace that, so, oh, this is what's happening, and relate to it as just another object, then you start to see that it'll calm down. And so the idea about Kobe, the principles are the same, but he's in but the main thing is he's unlocked. So the question is, how do you unlock? And you don't get unlocked once and you're always unlocked. No, it's going to be up and down. Things change, you change. And as a matter of fact, it's a moving target. So we have this idea that we're these fixed points. I'd say being a human being, we're more like an ever-changing event. We're always changing. And so that's why we have to keep vigilant about what we're seeing, what we're thinking. We talk about championship conversations or presidential conversations. What's the conversation that's going on in your mind, your self-talk? Because that's creating your reality. I'll give you an example. How many people here are having a conversation with somebody they have a challenging relationship with and they're not there. Do you know what you're doing? You create with the word. You're actually creating the situation, and usually that's how it turns out, right? So what would happen if you change that conversation to connecting and relating to the person, soul to soul, or heart to heart, or as a whole person? And see, this is where the benefits are. People think meditation is just when you're quiet and this and that. No, meditation is, you can do that from the time you wake up, be mindful, from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. And there's a couple of philosophers that talk about that, called Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. I got my mind on money, money on my mind. That's meditation. Whatever you focus on, it grows. Meditation means to contemplate. To contemplate means to look at repeatedly and look at closely. So whatever's on your mind, you're creating. So we got to know that, but we don't know. We're not looking. We're not paying attention to that conversation. That conversation is leading to behavior and the feelings. And so from moment to moment, you can ask yourself, am I reacting or am I responding? Am I in survival mode or am I in growth mode? When you're in survival mode, you're coming from lack and you're thinking, you're waiting to exhale, waiting for the shoe to drop. And when you're in that energy, 9 out of 10 thoughts are going to be negative. Why? Because you're in the reptilian brain. So we have to know ourselves. When I'm in this, how do I get out of it? You get out of it by saying, oh, I'm in survival mode. I'm going to get in growth mode. What's the lesson? The growth mindset. What do I need to learn here? What do I need to learn and practice so I can do what I need to do? Does that make sense? But we have all this power. We have these birth gifts that are unopened. We make choices. We have principles. We can live a principle-centered life that keeps us true north. And we have 4 domains of being that we have to exercise. Just like we exercise physically, we got to exercise mentally, emotionally, spiritually, but not just exercise flexibility, balance. But you got to work on that stuff. And so we look at us being a whole person and the other person being a whole person. So when you compare yourself to Kobe or MJ, that's a losing proposition. The best thing to do is compare yourself to your previous best self. That makes sense? And so now you're growing because you're different, you're unique. You have something to offer that they don't have. There never was and never will be another you. You're unique. So, and I'm saying it's not just her, but all of us. Our job is to know why we're here, what's our uniqueness, develop it and share it with the rest of us for the highest good. Yes. Thank you for the.
So you mentioned a lot of high caliber people, but that's a small percentage of people who will be your Michael Jordans and your Kobe Bryants. So my question to you is, what was it that uncovered the masterpiece in you, and what was the process? Yes. How long did it take? What was going on in your head when you didn't see yourself as a masterpiece, and how did you transition?
Well, in my book, The Mind for Athlete, I talk about a certain type of motivation, AOF, motivation. You all heard about that? Yeah, it's called ass on fire. You know, the gift of desperation. And Joseph Campbell also says your life is where your pain is. So, you know, we do a at home with George every Thursday, and what do we do in that at home? We say, let's create the possibility of embracing saying yes to whatever comes up, generate the hope, and make wise choices in that space, the self-regulation. And so for me, it had to do with me getting to a place where I couldn't keep doing what I was doing, and I could not do what I was doing. So once I, like I said, once I you know, in the AA Big Book, it talks about your basic dilemma is a lack of power, yet there is one who has all power. May you, where you reach them or connect with them now. And so my Mindful Athlete book is about the superpowers, or creating your own power plan. You have access to power. And I'll give you an example. When I look at my recovery, or when I look at my substance abuse, something happens and I get to interpret what it means. So why not interpret it in ways that empowers me, gives me access to power? And how did I do that? I looked at it as an opportunity for me to access my masterpiece because of the difficulty, because I couldn't do it any other way, but I have to connect to this energy that's in the universe that you can connect with just by looking at it, interpreting it in a way like, what's the lesson? How can I help myself? And how can I help myself so I can help others also? Does that make sense? And so the research bears this out. 90%, I don't know if we have that slide, but 90% of our long-term happiness is predicated on what? On how the brain and the nervous system interprets our experience. Not 10%, 90%. So that's the self-regulation. Where you look at an elite athletes, this is what they do. They see a crisis, and this is the first thing I said to the Bulls when Michael was going. I said, okay, we have a crisis, but there's two meanings. One meaning is danger, we get that one, but the other one's opportunity. Now we talk about leadership. Who's going to step up? Who's going to step in the void? You understand what I'm saying? And so that's what I did. I looked at it, but to be honest with you, today's April 1st. It's April Fool's Day. April Fool's Day 1984. A friend of mine came by my house, and he used to get high and everything. I'm looking at him and say, he's sober, he's clean, what's going on? He took me to AA meeting. And then that vision of possibility opened up. Oh, he can do this. There's a way out here. But I had to have that sense of urgency, the want to, and saying, I can't keep doing this. But, that's a vision of possibility. And that's what we try to do as leaders, is we try to create a possibility for people to say, I want to get into that. I want to put some skin in the game. Great question.
As someone who's in the counseling realm and who is going to be in the sports psychologist route or going there, I always end up to the point working with people of like, you deserve this, you're unique, because people aren't going to change for their betterment if they don't believe that they can do it and that they deserve better. So what are ways to help empower people to get them to the point where they can accept love and they do deserve better no matter what situation that they're in?
Yes, well, you share your experience, strength, and hope, right? But you create a possibility for them. But the interesting thing is they have to want it. This is the interesting thing. But if you, like I saw the possibility, and this is what we do as leaders, we control the conversational environment, and we have a say, but we give other people a say and what's going to happen to them, and say, hey, you're a bad mofo. You can do this, but do you want it? It's like that Kool & the Gang song. Are you going to get up or you going to get down? Are you going to stay on the wall or you're going to get off the wall? You got to get up to get down. You understand what I'm saying? So this happened to my nephew. My nephew was a gangbanger, and he was paralyzed, just like Boys in the Hood. He's in the wheelchair. So when he was in the bed, my sister-in-law said to him, are you going to get up or give up? That's leadership. He got up, and he was in Special Olympics, and when I went to visit him in 2018, he was dying of cancer, and I spent a few days with him, and this dude was like, I'm looking at him saying, you eating more than me, you're supposed to be dying, and you still happy, and you still going to the hospital and helping people who are just recently paralyzed, you're still counseling them, and you're dying of cancer. You understand what I'm saying? So that's why I write this book. This is why I do this, because if I share what I got and say, well, I got this, you can do this too, and here's how you do it. You just have to take responsibility. You think about it, you got to know who you are, and so that includes, and there's a book called On Becoming a Leader, Warren Bennis, and he talks about the 4 lessons of self-knowledge are: you can learn anything you want to learn. No, you're your own best teacher. Be responsible, no excuses. Right? That's what it talks about. It talks about stuff like that. You can learn anything you want to learn. And the 4th thing that is really huge is this contemplation, reflecting on experience before, during, and after. True understanding comes from reflecting on experience. So when you make a mistake, it's an opportunity to learn what do you need to learn and practice. So the growth mindset says, I made a mistake. How do I do that? Not the why did I do that, but how do I do that? And how does so-and-so do it? So you have doubt, you investigate, and you explore. Just like people here, how do you do this? And you ask the questions. And it's interesting because when you get into that high as a hurricane, there's a place of rest, and there's an athlete, you know that when you get in the flow, but I'm in flow a lot, and I'm not doing athletic stuff, but anybody can have access to flow if they challenge themselves and continue to develop levels of wellness. But the thing is, it's understanding that you're a bad mofo. You got a masterpiece within, but you got to embrace that. But you can't have somebody see that because they don't occur to themselves as being worthy. And so they have to go inside and look at it and say, okay, what is that? So what's in the way becomes the way. You get what I'm saying? So they got to investigate why they feel that way. And it's probably because something happened in the past and they keep living in a default future instead of making peace with that. That's where the forgiveness and the gratitude and catching yourself doing something right and say, okay, yeah, I had athletes that are A students, but the basketball or whatever sport they were playing, they didn't have the same level of skill because they didn't believe it. But once you change how you see things, once you practice and align with principles, you can get there. Okay. So you all are asking some really great questions.
Hello. I love what you say about flow and self-regulation. What are some good strategies for self-regulation?
Self-regulation, pay attention and take responsibility. You have to start seeing how your thoughts and emotions you're entertaining and the behaviors you're engaged in, but also how you're interpreting things. And the most important thing is how you interpret yourself and whether or not you like the gentleman was talking about, whether you feel worthy or whether you think, because you're not supposed to try to be like Kobe or like Mia Hamm or anybody. You're supposed to be yourself. So that's why people would ask me, well, isn't this antithetical to competition? I said, no, because you're not competing against anything out there. It's an inside job. You're competing against your previous best self. But ask the question, this is what the philosopher Alan Watts said, to ask the question is to know the answer. So you got to go inside, be still and know, or you keep asking questions, keep investigating and seeing, how do I do it? Or how did somebody else do it? You understand what I'm saying? But it's the self-awareness, the self-regulation, but also this idea of connecting to something higher than yourself, getting to a certain level of consciousness. Remember the quote by Einstein, the significant problems we face today cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we first created them. So you have to renew your mind, get a new mind, start over again. Does that make sense? And make peace with the past. But this thing here, it gets jammed up. How do I unjam it? I turn it off and turn it back on. We got to reset, reboot, renew as well. But you have to focus on what you want instead of focusing on what you're not getting. So there's all that stuff, but it's in the books. You can read it, and not just my book, but if you Google it, you'll find 90,000 ways of doing it. But it comes down to your will and your motivation and your commitment. Huh? Yes. So he said, how did I help Michael and Kobe find their masterpiece and where their blind spots? Well, they were finding their masterpiece. I was just helping them to go deeper. But the other part of it is we all have blind spots. I have one of these fancy cars, and it has a blind spot detector. And so when the car's there and the blind spot tells us, well, we need a community, we need trusted mentors or friends who are able to tell us that we're not seeing things, that there's a blind spot there, but they trust you. So when I said you have a blind spot there, which I talked about Michael with his leadership, there was a blind spot, but I didn't judge him. I just said, actually he asked me, he says, how can you help me with this? And I said, okay, here's something you might think about. And just sharing that with him. You understand? But we all have blind spots because we see this way, we don't see inside and we don't see behind us. But it takes a whole community. It takes a village. And that's why being in relationship, when I talked about the social awareness and relationship development, we have to have relations. And that's why being a leader, you got to have integrity and character. See, we don't talk about that, but integrity is not a moral thing, it's a workability thing. Because it starts with us. If you say to yourself, I'm going to get up tomorrow morning and go work out, and you don't go work out, why would you trust yourself? You feel me? You know what I'm saying? So this idea of continuous inquiry, thinking, am I being honest or am I not? That really, and sometimes you need other people around you to help you out with that. But the thing is this is a continuous thing. It's not one and done. It's always thinking about what thoughts am I having, and are they helping or are they not? How am I feeling? How am I doing? You understand what I'm saying? So there's a lot there to get to. But once you ask the question and you become interested in it, and if you use that energy to seek to understand, you're going to realize that, wow, this is an amazing life. Because one of the things that I discovered that I think is really helpful is when you learn and you achieve, this is what I've done over these years, learning achievement, it creates this energizing enthusiasm. So the joy of discovery, it releases chemicals when you start, getting curious. So our energy comes from being curious, passionate, and on purpose. And when the purpose is beyond selfishness, man, you're really in it. So how's this going for you folks? You all into it? Nancy's in the house. Thank you. I'm just saying hi to one of my, I don't know what to call her, friend, but when I first met Nancy, she was a freshman at Boston College. And here it is all these years later, and she's still connected. She's still teaching me.
I have a question going back a couple of your responses. I totally understand the approach and everything, and how can you help someone who's older, not working anymore, toward, in their like maybe final stages of their life, where you're surrounding them with all this positive stuff, and their whole life has been a struggle and has had a negative, very negative attitude from the life they had to lead. And no matter, say, how hard I try to keep the positive and to get them to help themselves and change their way of thinking and all that, it has a profound negative effect on me, and I just don't know how to help a person like that. So do you have any suggestions, like how would you apply what you're saying to someone who's in that retired older stage, and you want them to be able to live a good life the rest of their life, and you see it's a internal mental struggle because of their whole life?
Yeah, so I would focus on myself, on you, and just ask yourself, you have an idea of what they need, but maybe that's just your idea. See, because on some level, there's not accepting, it is what it is. You understand what I'm saying? And sometimes you letting go and letting be will create space for them to, because they're feeling like on some level you might be judging them or whatever. You understand what I'm saying? How many people, you deal with people in recovery and whatnot, very frustrating, very frustrating. But the problem is what's happening is happening because the conditions for what's happening to be happening are present. And so our job is to accept that and realize we want it more than they do. How many people have had that, especially coaches and loved ones, you want it more than the other person? How's that working for you? It doesn't work. So all you do is pray for them and just, just look at, okay, can I see their masterpiece and can I embrace them just as they are, give them the love, unconditional love for no reason? So that's challenging, because when you love somebody, you don't want to see them suffer, but life is suffering. And the reality is you allowing them to suffer with their own dignity, But you can still do whatever you need to do, pray, do all this stuff, and whether they take it or not, that's not your business. Your business is to do everything you can, and sometimes we can just pray for them and just continue to do stuff, but you can actually create that space for them to grow into. Like, you keep hope open that they might be able to get it. Now, I'll share a story with you. My Uncle William, his wife died the year before, and he moved back to Boston, and he had cancer in his face, and he used to, because I'm close to my uncle, so he called me and said, hey man, why don't you come by? You know, he smoked weed and, you know, drink or whatever. And I said, no, Uncle, I'm in recovery. You know, I don't do that. So I'm going to these meetings and that sort of stuff. And so he said, okay, cool. And so, you know, when he died, he didn't take any pain medication because he wanted to meet his maker with full consciousness. See, we don't have any idea. So we're leading, believe it or not, people, you know, on an unconscious level, they watch what we do more than they hear what we say. You understand what I'm saying? And so sometimes the best way to have an influence is to just be yourself and let other people be themselves, but continue to give them that love and that, you know, creating, and I'm asking us to be vulnerable, to create a space for them to live into. So to see them as you would like them to be. You understand? Hold that wish out. Instead of looking at them, they're like this, I don't know how that's going to work. But that's what, as a leader, a lot of times, that's what we do. We create a space for them, but at the same time, we have to allow them to be where they are. Make sense? And that's a challenging lesson. Yeah. Of course, that's just my opinion. But here's the thing I want to say before I go there. You can believe what I say, but I want you to have a direct experience of it. So once you have a direct experience of it, it's not faith, it becomes conviction.
Hi, I don't know if I'm going to well phrase this question, but I love thinking about these athletes that are working towards finding their masterpiece and really dedicating their time to that. I'm just thinking of a lot of people in the room, including myself, who carry out multiple roles. So we might be administrators, we might be educators, we're scholars, we're caregivers in some ways, we're students. So do you have some advice on how to work on this when you're quickly moving from one job to another, and if that makes sense? Like,
yeah, so in other words, how do you hit a moving target?
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea of like these athletes really focusing in on exactly what they need to do and being in that right mental space. But my question is more about when you're moving back and forth, how can you quickly get into that mental space for that moment of time?
Yeah, well, you just got to be in the moment. You heard me on the thing there. Just manage this moment. Do what you know to do. Make the next play. Or remember to win. W-I-N. What's important now? See, sometimes the best we can do is just, you know, and this goes back to my Sunday school, do what you know to do and the next step will be given to you. You understand what I'm saying? But right now is the only time we have. So what you do in this moment is going to set up the next moment. So we have this balancing act where we live in the future we see, so we got to be clear about what future are we seeing that we're living into. But at the same time, we got to manage the moment. And then we got to learn from the past as well. But none of that stuff can happen except for in this moment. You can't think about the past until only in this moment. You can think about the future in this moment, but we got to understand what we're doing and understanding that, yeah, because what I hear is, okay, we're moving around, or maybe I'll do it this way. I work with professional athletes, and they say, well, you know, I'm in my contract year, but I'm only playing so many minutes, and I don't play enough time to make a difference. And I have to challenge that assumption and say, maybe what you need to focus on is how can you help the team and make the next play? And just go out there and, I call it, make the coach play you. What do you mean? You keep making plays and the team's better when you're out there, they're going to put you back out there. You understand what I'm saying? But for some of us, we want to know we're going to succeed, and we're looking for this big, complicated thing when it's really simple. Just take care of this moment, serve, do the best you can, and then when you got to leave, you know it's going to happen, you just let it go, and then you move to the next thing. Because a lot of us, I don't know if you folks are anything like me, but sometimes when we're here, we're still where we were. Or we're where we're going to be, we're not here. And we're thinking about things, and they're thinking about it and contemplating that's going to make us better. Well, that doesn't do much for today or right now. And so we got to know we're doing it. Sometimes you have to do it, but other times you're better off just being in the moment and just being, because at the end of the day, we want to get to a place where we're engaging what we're doing for the activity in and of itself. Is what Chick sent me. I call it the autotelic person. Is just manage this moment and be fully engaged, fully self-expressed, and do the best you can, and then you got to let go of the results. That make sense? But that's the thing, the ever-moving thing is, because things are changing. You all notice that? Things are changing real fast, and you can wake up one moment and you look out the front door and there's the beach there. Or you can look outside and there's a fire coming at you. We don't know from moment to moment what's going to happen, but what we do know is we get to choose our response or our reaction to it. And we got to focus on now, because we're not guaranteed. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. All right? You got a hand over, a couple of hands. Wait for the mic, because I can't hear you. I'm a little hard of hearing too.
Thank you.
So,
as a person that does not like to be overly selfish, how do you become selfish?
Could you say that a little bit louder, because I didn't hear that part?
You
just put the mic closer to your mouth. Yeah.
A person that's not overly selfish, how do they get to become selfish to get to their self-worth and the self-mindfulness that they need to be to achieve their inner masterpiece without feeling like they have to be there for everybody else and one of those kind of things.
Yeah, yeah. You ever been on a plane? What do they tell you to do on a plane? Huh? Okay. So you think there's something to that metaphor? So I have a Georgism I'll share with you. You have to be selfish to be selfless. So what I talked about before, you got to have the self-regulations and the self-awareness to become self-mastery. Then when you have the self-mastery, now it's a work in progress, then you can help other people do the same. But you got to help yourself, and you got to model the behavior. See, because most of us, especially kids, they're on a nonverbal level. You're saying something, they're watching you. And as I think it was Maya Angelou who said, people might forget what you say or what you do, but they never forget how you make them feel. So there's a clue right there. You understand what I'm saying? But we have these ideas about how things should be instead of going with how the principles, how things are. And so this idea of, and that's why I said, the greatest commandment, to love God with all your mind, heart, and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. That's a problem, because we have this idea that you have to be selfless before you even take care of yourself. And we got to do both. And that's why it's complex. It's yes and, not either or. So you got to work on yourself, and you got to connect with others. But if you're not relating yourself as a whole person, if you're thinking like you don't deserve your own love and you got to do that, then you're relating to yourself as a thing, not as a person. You get that? And that's the thing that we don't understand, that we have to understand. So when you do something, you have to understand what it means to be human and what the impact is. So being an adult means we got to understand what we're doing and what the consequences are, and we got to own that. If we're a company and we're just giving the shareholders all the money and we're not paying the people and we're not taking care of the community we live in, that's not wholeness. You understand what I'm saying? Because we have this idea, well, if I do that, I can't make a profit. No, there's companies that make a lot of money by serving and doing things. That's what I had to learn when I was short on money. It's like, well, I got to make money. No, I just have to serve. The money will come. See how that's a difference. You understand what I'm saying? But you said, how many people have this experience of not wanting to be selfish, or it doesn't feel right? Anybody? Yeah, okay. Because that's how we program ourselves. Like, oh, you can't be selfish. Well, that's an opinion. And sometimes you have to take care of yourself because you won't be able to take care of the other person. So great question.
George, we got time for one more. I've been given the signal. Let me wrap it up. This may be a this may launch into another 30 minutes. I don't know. What was your aha moment? You had come through the loss of your basketball career, and then the dark days when you sank into to addiction. What was your aha moment, and how did you feel when you suddenly realized there was a way out from where you were?
Well, thank you for saying that, because I think there were multiple ones, but the first one was like, I can't keep doing this, and I can't not do it, so that you get to that place of surrender. But then it's interesting because I think there's a relationship between that and my friend showing up. See, the universe will collude once you get clear about what you want, and he showed up on April Fool's Day. I think that's interesting. Takes me to a meeting, but I saw him and said, "Whoa, there's hope." 'Cause up to that point, I thought there was no hope. So there's a lot of aha moments, but I think what happened was I was ready for what happened. See, I was too sick and tired of being sick and tired. You hear people say that, but I think the aha moment is, and then I had another one, interesting, because when I went into the detox, this is the interesting thing, because there's a still small voice in there that we drown out that knows a lot of stuff. So I was going into the detox, and I heard a voice say, you know, if the same George that goes in there comes out, we got a problem. We got a problem. And so when I went in there, I changed my consciousness. So when I walked home, it was the first time I saw my street and my house, because I was living in fantasy and whatnot. So there's a multiplicity of them, but it's just, you get a lot of aha moments when things click, but the main thing was seeing that there was a possibility. See, that's why I keep talking about, once you see that there's a possibility, see, because we perform based on how things occur to us. So if we see something as being easy, important, exciting to do, then we do it. So we have to change how we see things. And so for me, I had a shift in consciousness, like I talked about it, and I said, whoa, because I wasn't looking for it, but I needed something, because I was saying, this ain't working, and my ass is on fire. So I'm looking for relief. But that's a relevant question. But I might ask you folks, did you have any aha moments here, or did you hear something and all of a sudden you get it? See, that's what I love about learning, because you'll be doing things, and a lot of stuff we learn is like what we call non-declarative or implicit learning, but then at some point, we get it. Now, for some of you, you might be like me. My father told me a lot of stuff, and he was an alcoholic. I said, that old man don't know what he's talking about. I can't tell you how wise he's gotten in the last 20 years.
Well, George, thank you so much. This has been enlightening. I'm really grateful that you accepted our invitation and that you helped us kick off this presidential conversation tour with your presence here today. So,
well, thank you. It's been a great honor, and I have to tell you, one of my greatest honors is meeting Bill. I know I don't want to embarrass him or whatever, but it's
I don't
it's
embarrass
interesting.
easy, but
okay,
go ahead.
It's interesting when you have people who have values like you, and they're here for the highest good. So I just want to thank you for that, and I thank you all, because you some bad mofos.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us today. Watch for the next presidential conversation. We'll be announcing that soon when we get that all set up. God bless you and have a great day.